Oh my god. Is that the greatest thing you've ever heard? This is your Sound Off Extra WWE Fastlane 2017 review. I am the Solomonster. Fastlane from the Bradley Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just ended a few minutes ago. And, oof. That's all I can say. I'm looking at the poll results so far. The poll's only been up for not even 10 minutes. And so far we've already got over 700 votes. And normally when people are really, really happy or really, really angry, they're motivated to vote. And I have a feeling I know which end of the spectrum people are falling on here. But I'm looking at the poll results. And so far it don't look good. Only 25% thumbs up. 75% thumbs down, and it's trending even more negative as the seconds go on. Now it's even worse now. But yeah, it's hard for me to sit here and defend this pay-per-view, although I'm going to try to just a little bit. There were two excellent matches on this show, and another good match with Charlotte and Bayley. I know some people weren't thrilled with the finish, but they had a good match. And I thought that the Cruiserweight title match and I thought the Roman Reigns Braun Strowman match until the finish was excellent. And so you take those three matches, and I would probably go a little higher than that. I wouldn't go 25% thumbs up. I'd go a little higher. But still, overall, I'm pretty much in agreement with all of you. Overall, thumbs down show. This will not go down as one of the better pay-per-views of the year. And if it does, we're in for a really bad year. So let's hope that's not the case. But let's start from the pre-show. We'll work our way through this thing here. Pre-show match was Akira Tozawa and Rich Swann against The Brian Kendrick and Noam Dar. Pretty good match. Tozawa and Swann, they hit stereo dives to the outside on Kendrick and Dar. Tozawa hit the snap German on Kendrick. And Swann hit a big Phoenix splash on Noam Dar. Hit it from halfway across the ring and got the pin. So the babyfaces go over. Pay-per-view opened with Samoa Joe against Sami Zayn. I had a lot of big expectations for this match. And unfortunately, this did not meet my expectations. This was a hell of a lot more one-sided than I expected it to be. Especially after that big brawl they had on Monday night and Sami did the dive and they had to be pulled apart. I thought this would be at least a little more, even than it was. Joe killed him for the first half before Sami finally started to build some offense. He did hit the Blue Thunder Bomb on Joe, which I have to say was impressive because Joe's a big boy, and that's not an easy thing to do. It's not like Sami is, exactly Jinder Mahal made of muscle here. We'll talk about Jinder in a little bit. Joe did tease the Muscle Buster at one point. The announcers called it that. They acknowledged it, so he didn't go through with it, but I think it's safe to say that the Muscle Buster is not banned. I keep getting questions. I talked about this on the podcast earlier. I don't believe it's banned. I do think they're phasing it down. But I'm sure at some point, maybe at WrestleMania, we'll see him bust out the Muscle Buster. Sami went for the Haluva kick in the corner. Joe caught him for the Uranage and then locked him in the choke. Sami faded. And that was all she wrote. Joe wins by submission. Kind of disappointing, I gotta say. I expected more out of these two. Maybe they're saving it for WrestleMania. Perhaps. For Sami's sake, I hope so, because otherwise, what the hell's he gonna do? I also loved it, and by loved it, I mean hated it. How Sami was supposedly choked out, and yet seconds later, when the bell rang and the match was over, he suddenly was awake. It's like, dude, come on. Just lay there for a little bit. So yeah, this was kind of underwhelming. Backstage, Bayley said if Charlotte wants to prove that she's the best, she should leave Dana Brooke in the back. I would leave Dana Brooke in the back just for fear that she'll screw something up. I think that's a fine recommendation. Nia Jax showed up. She said, if by chance Bayley happens to keep her championship tonight, don't get too comfy because I'm next. God help us all. Enzo Amore and Big Cass against Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson for the Raw Tag Team titles. Gallows and Anderson, they got the win here. They retained the titles. It was a decent match. Best part was probably Enzo getting the hot tag, diving for the hot tag to Big Cass. And the big man running wild. They hit the rocket launcher in the corner on Anderson, and they had the titles won, but Gallows reached in, yanked Enzo off of Anderson to break up the fall. Kaz went out after him. He got thrown into the barricade. Enzo did a dive off the apron, so he took out Gallows. He's jumping all over the place like he's just a ball of energy. And Enzo gets on the apron and immediately gets clobbered by a running knee from Anderson and pinned. Enzo got his foot on the bottom rope before the 3 count, but Gallows managed to push the foot off. Referee didn't see it. It's like I said on the podcast. There's no way after all this time, not getting the tag team titles in NXT, not getting the titles so far in the main roster, that Enzo and Cass were going to win them a month before WrestleMania. They'll get them at WrestleMania, but not on Fastlane. The finish here leaves it open to a rematch. That's why they did the finish they did. And probably, and maybe this is the match at WrestleMania, it could be a 3-way. I'm sure Sheamus and Cesaro will worm their way in there somehow. So not a completely unexpected finish, and it sets things up, I assume, for WrestleMania. Stephanie McMahon was stuck on the tarmac somewhere. Can we keep her there? Is it possible to just keep her on that plane and not let her off? I guess it wouldn't matter because she was stuck on a plane, and yet still she found her way on this show. She called in. She was on speakerphone with Mick Foley. So even when she's not there, we cannot avoid this woman. She's always there. She yelled at Foley. What else? And she said that you better make sure there's no funny business with that Universal title match. So, She said that she's going to stay on the line for the duration of the show. She threatened to stay on the phone all night. Why even have a general manager? Why is Mick Foley even employed at this point? I mean, I think we all know where this is going. I'm shocked he's still employed at all. She doesn't trust this guy. She thinks he's doing a terrible job. Why can't she get rid of him? So Foley, when she said this, he picked up the handset and I guess got disconnected and we never heard from Stephanie again. And then, at the very end of this segment, they did what I call the WWE special, where they linger. They linger on the person for far too long. So Foley had to stand there like an idiot with a stupid look on his face. This segment was the definition of cringe. Sasha Banks against Nia Jax. It's a lot like the Joe-Sami match in that Nia kind of took on the role of Samoa Joe here and dominated much of it. She was using Sasha like a play toy, throwing her around. You knew Sasha was winning this thing. Not just because Nia was dominating so much of it, but, it was the Rumble, I think. The Royal Rumble where Nia just squashed her. They weren't going to do that twice in a row. So she had Sasha up in a torture rack, and Sasha managed to turn that into a guillotine. She kind of worked her way around to the front of Nia. She had her in a guillotine choke. Then she turned it into a sleeper hold and got her down, but, couldn't quite win the match. And Sasha got the pin with a reverse rolling cradle. So a fluke win, but a win nonetheless. A win that she desperately needed. Match was boring, though, until the last 2 or 3 minutes. Fans started to get into it, but most of it was just a bore. Speaking of a bore, that brings me to Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal against Cesaro. So let me set this up. So on the pre-show, we had a backstage segment with Jinder Mahal and Rusev. And they have an up-close shot of Jinder. And oh my God, this guy is a walking neon sign. The veins in his arms look like they were about to burst. God knows what chemicals might leak out. And so when they were in the back earlier, Mick Foley said, well, you guys, obviously have an issue with each other. Instead of just making a match between the two of them, not that anybody wants to see the friggin' match, Foley had an idea that each guy would have to wrestle a mystery opponent. So this was the part of the show where it kind of died. And they both came out. They brawled for a little bit. Jinder beat the hell out of Rusev. And I guess he says, I want my match to go first. And so out comes Cesaro, who got one of the biggest pops, by the way, in the entire show. It wasn't even scheduled for a match. So he comes out. We get Jinder Mahal against Cesaro. And it was a boring match. Cesaro sold his back for most of it, so he couldn't hit some of his moves. Although at one point he did hit an impressive kind of delayed vertical suplex. Not the best one I've seen him do. But when you got to sell an injury like that, there's only so much you can do. You're not out there to show all your flashy moves. Saving grace of this was he won with a giant uppercut. And if you've listened to my podcast for any length of time, you know that way back when I proposed that he ought to use this as his finish. I think this is a far more impressive move than the neutralizer. I don't know why he never decided to use this as, at least one of his finishers. He can alternate. It's the one where he propels the guy up into the air and nails him with the forearm on the way down. He did that to Jinder and he got the pin. He won with the move. That's the only good thing I can say about this match. He actually won with the uppercut. I was happy to see that. Otherwise, this was a colossal waste of time. So then we have Rusev. Well, Jinder just got beat. Rusev now is up, and Rusev sees him laying there. He beats the hell out of him, gives him a kick. Now we find out who Rusev's opponent is, and it was the Big Show. They had a long match. Now, I thought when Big Show was coming down to the ring, Big Show had a look on his face like Shaquille O'Neal took a dump in his cereal. Okay, he's marching down to the ring. He's just full of piss and vinegar. I thought he's going to walk in, knockout punch, 1, 2, 3. And what a burial of Rusev that would have been. But you know what? I almost would have preferred it because they had a regular match. It felt like an eternity. I mean, the thing may have only gone 8 or 9 minutes. I don't know, but it felt double that. This was even more boring than the previous match. Crowd chanted USA at Big Show because whenever you got a foreigner in the ring, I guess that's what you do. USA, USA. Anyway, Big Show finally hit the chokes. A lot of just nonsense in the middle, and Big Show at one point was selling the knee. Always an exciting match when you have Big Show selling the knee. He hit the choke slam, picked him up, gave him another choke slam. That's not enough. Picked Rusev up again, gave him a third choke slam. Then he propped Rusev's dead carcass up in the corner by the bottom rope. I didn't know what he was doing here. I thought he was going to go for a Bronco Buster. Instead, he gives him the KO punch. And then he drags him to the middle of the ring and he pins him. Really, that's how this match ended. This had no business being on this pay-per-view. And poor Rusev, someone tweeted me and said that Chael Sonnen on his podcast, I guess he must have had a WWE writer or an ex-WWE writer, and they were talking, and apparently they claimed anyway that Rusev, maybe the question came up, well, what are they doing more with this Rusev guy? And apparently Rusev has heat. For what? I have no idea. And apparently they don't know either, but that's what the guy said. I would love to know what this guy did to be stuck with Jinder Mahal for the last 6 months, and then to get treated like this. I would love to know the reason. We had Neville and Jack Gallaher for the Cruiserweight title. Here's where it got good. This was an excellent match. These guys worked their asses off, and they really work well together. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gallaher anyway. Neville, come on. Neville is one of the best. Some of the highlights here, there was a superplex spot by Gallaher for a near fall. This was a wicked superplex. Neville had that was a rough landing. Hurt my neck just watching it. Gallaher, now you talk about brutal. That was nothing compared to this. Gallaher comes charging in at Neville. Neville sidesteps him, so Gallaher hits Gallaher, I should say, hits the ropes chest first. Immediately, Neville catches him with a quick release German suplex and just dumps him right on the back of his neck. One of the nastiest suplexes you'll ever see. He landed right on the back of his neck. It looked cool, though. I'm sure it didn't feel too cool, but it looked cool. We had a Phoenix Splash by Neville from the middle rope for another near fall. People were getting into this. They were chanting, "This is awesome." The first time all night any match got a "This is awesome" chant was here in the Cruiserweight title match. And that's a big deal because, if in September when the Cruiserweights first came to Raw, if you said, well, a Cruiserweight match on pay-per-view in February, or March, I guess it is going to get a "This is awesome" chant, you would have assumed, well, of course, it's the Cruiserweights. But if you look at how these matches usually go, and they stick them in the middle of the card, the crowd's usually dead. Or they work a very kind of dull mat-based style. And in some cases, these are high-flying guys who you're not used to seeing them working a slower mat-based style, but that's what WWE wants. So you'd be surprised. There aren't very many Cruiserweight matches on these pay-per-views that get "This is awesome" chants. But this one did, because these guys were having a kick-ass match. Gallaher made a comeback. Again, crowd was into it. Gallaher hit a bunch of headbutts. I watched this guy. I studied it. Like when they hit a move and you hear the big thwack, the big sound. It's like they smack the leg or they do these little tricks. And I'm always kind of watching. For the life of me, I gotta say, Gallaher hits these headbutts, and I don't know how he does it. It makes a great sound. People, they go ooh, And I watch this guy and I'm like, I don't see him, smacking his legs, smacking his ass, smacking his head. I'm like, I'm impressed. I don't know how he's pulling it off, but Looks like he's headbutting the guy in the head. And he went for a superplex. So Gallaher's trying for a superplex. Can't do it. Neville suplexed him off the ropes. Really bad landing for Gallaher. Again, he kind of landed on the side of his neck and shoulder. I mean, this guy took an ass kicking in this match. He's going to feel this in the morning. Neville busts out the red arrow for the first time in a while. Gets the pin, retains the championship. Neville is just incredible. I got to say, one of the best in the business. The things that, I mean, people talk a lot about Ricochet and Will Ospreay and guys and those guys are great in their own. I mean, those guys can do things that the human body should not be able to do. But I think that we take this guy for granted. And he's been getting a lot of love since he turned heel, but I still think people take him for granted because he's been around for a while. He's not the new guy anymore. He's not really he's finally being featured now, but for the longest time, Neville wasn't really featured. Then he got hurt. And I don't think people really appreciate how good this guy is. And on top of that, he's really embraced this heel persona. I think he's just knocked it out of the park. But, I just wanted to show him some love here because there are very few people in this company, I think, who could touch what this guy can do in the ring. You can count them on one hand and still have fingers left over. And he had that on full display here. And this was a great match. The New Day came out. They were pushing an ice cream cart. They never actually took any ice cream out of it. They could have easily saved this for Raw. It's very obvious when I look back on this now, given what happened in the main event, that they were just stalling for time. And, I look at this and I say to myself, they had this match planned for weeks. Okay, when did it first leak that the plan, supposedly, was for Goldberg to win the championship? This has been rumored for a while. They had this match planned for a while. You knew going in it was going to be a short match. This is the pay-per-view that you come up with? You're going to stick a random Jinder Mahal match and Big Show against Rusev, and you're going to have the New Day roll out an ice cream cart and not do anything and then turn around and go to the back? Oh, we have to kill time. How about you come up with better friggin' matches? I mean, it's embarrassing. I know they have the network now, so they don't have to worry about, pay-per-view the way they used to. But still, I look at the layout of the show, and it's not like a big surprise that the main event wasn't going very long. And they did a piss-poor job of planning for the show because there was a lot of meaningless crap that just had no business being on here, and this was one of them. This was a waste of time. And by the way, unless they're bringing back the old WWF ice cream cookie bars, I'm not interested. I was watching this, I will say, hoping that when they opened the lid of the cart, which they never did, that Vanguard 1 would come flying out of it, but didn't happen. There was a delete, delete, delete sign that the camera caught behind them, which I thought was quite fitting. Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman. Roman was out there wearing sneakers for some reason, so either he lost his luggage and his boots were inside, or, as I said on Twitter, they really do want him to become the next John Cena. I'm torn on this. Let me say this. The match itself, awesome. Awesome. And if you would have told me a few weeks ago, if you would have told me a month ago, if you would have told me 3 months ago, when Strowman was part of the Wyatt fam, I guess it was longer than 3 months. If you told me 6 months ago or 8 months ago that Braun Strowman would have a match with Roman Reigns on pay-per-view and it would be awesome. Braun Strowman would have any match on pay-per-view and it would be awesome. I would have laughed in your face. And yet here he was. He was out there. Braun Strowman is the real deal. We see so many of these big guys who get the monster push and they've got 2 left feet, but not this guy. Not this guy. He doesn't look clumsy. He looks capable. And that's the difference. This was, I think, a breakout performance for him, despite the finish, which I'm going to get to. But this was a breakout performance for this guy. And just because he lost does not mean that it's the end of the road. It doesn't mean that he's killed dead. I don't think he is at all. I think this was a strong enough match, and he made such an impression here that I think it bodes well for the guy's future. I don't doubt that there are probably people in the back whose opinion matters more than ours, who watched this and said, okay, this guy's he's got something here. This guy isn't just a flash in the pan. He didn't, just have a couple of good matches, and now we kind of throw him into the fire and he goes out there and embarrasses himself. This guy can carry the load. Because this was also, they gave them some time. I didn't clock it, but this was, probably a 10 to 15 minute match. And he didn't look overly blown up. He wasn't, falling over himself. He wasn't gassed out or anything like that. He hung with Roman, and he had a great match. And again, so did Roman. Got to give Roman some credit. But I really want to shine a spotlight on Strowman, because I really do think that he opened a lot of eyes tonight. Now, that being said, it was the wrong call. And I know there are going to be people who say, yeah, you just admitted, he's not dead. This was a breakout performance. This was great. Doesn't make the finish any less stupid. It was stupid. Way too early to beat this guy clean the way they did here. I don't care if it is Roman Reigns. I don't care if it is their boy wonder. I don't give a shit. I know they're holding Undertaker off for tomorrow night. Okay, I'm sure Undertaker will be on Raw tomorrow night. I would have had the lights go out, or his music hit, or he shows up in the ring. Do something with him on this show to set the match up with Roman for Mania and to get yourself out of the situation that you put yourself in. Because frankly, this was not a match that should have happened. I'm still not even sure why they did this match. Strowman has a lot of momentum. And I think some of that now has been stalled. But again, in the end, I think he'll be okay. But this was unnecessary. He's been running through, just steamrolling through guys left and right. And if you didn't want to beat Roman Reigns because of who he is, or because he's wrestling The Undertaker at WrestleMania, then don't do the friggin' match. So once they made the match, all of a sudden people like myself are looking at this and going, man, how could they get out of this here? Because they're not just going to beat Roman, right? Unless The Undertaker shows up and costs him the match. But even if they did some sort of bullshit DQ, no contest finish, people still would have been pissed because it would have been a cheap ending to a great match. So this was really a no-win situation here. They put themselves in a no-win situation. So even despite everything I just said, and I enjoyed the match and all of that, it's a match that never should have happened in the first place. Way too early to do this. But they're having the match here, and we have Strowman kicking out of a spear, so at least he did that. At least he kicked out of a spear. Reigns tried for another spear on the floor at one point. This is one of the more impressive things, because Strowman caught him, power slammed him, did the running power slam through the Spanish announce table. People at that point were chanting, holy shit. I mean, they were really into this. And the finish was impressive because they had Strowman climb up to the top rope and everyone's on their feet, and Michael Cole's like, oh no, they're all wondering what he's going to do. I'm thinking to myself, oh no. He's been watching old Brock Lesnar tapes. He's going to bust out a 450 and kill himself. And thankfully he didn't do. You know what it reminded me of, actually? It reminded me of the match, and I don't even know why I remember this. I guess I was at the show, that's why. But the match itself was just shit. But there was a World Heavyweight title match at the Survivor Series back in 2011 in Madison Square Garden, and they had a world title match between Mark Henry, this was during his Hall of Pain run, and The Big Show. And during that match, The Big Show climbed up to the top rope, and I remember being in the building, and everybody was just on their feet, holding their breath, wondering, what the hell is this guy going to do? And he took so long. He was up there. You could tell he was nervous. Maybe he was having second thoughts. But Big Show is up there. He's holding on for dear life to the top rope, waiting for something. And then finally he jumps off for the Randy Savage elbow, and then we have Randy Savage chants. It was a big moment. And that's kind of what this reminded me of a little bit. As Strowman is climbing and people are wondering, what the hell is this guy going to do? It kind of reminded me for a second there of that Survivor Series match. No, nothing fancy. He came off with a giant splash. He missed. He went splat. He took a nice face bump on the mat. But still, very impressive for a guy that big. They call him 385. I don't doubt that he's probably somewhere in that range, maybe 350-ish or something. Because, they have to embellish and exaggerate and all that kind of thing. I mean, how many years they told us Big Show was 500 pounds? I mean, I know there were some points where Big Show got super fat and probably was every bit of 500 pounds. But more often than not, he ain't 500 pounds. And so you figure, but Braun's still a big guy, and for him to do that was, again, pretty impressive. And it just goes to show that this guy can surprise you. He can do certain things that you would not expect him to be able to do. Anyway, he missed the move. And it was after this that Roman hit the second spear. He got the pin. Yeah, I was joking on the podcast last week, I think. I said, man, the worst thing they could possibly do is just have a straight match and have Roman hit 3 spears instead of 1, and that's how they justify giving him the clean win. Well, guess what? He hit 2 spears, not 3. So, not a fan of that finish at all. I thought it sucked. I thought the match was awesome. And that's kind of what's tough to reconcile about this. I can't really hate on this because I thought they had a great match, but the ending was it was terrible. And it never should have happened. We have Bayley and Charlotte for the Raw Women's Championship. The streak is over. The streak is over. Charlotte loses her first singles match on pay-per-view. They had a good match. Bayley botched up a move in the corner at one point, looked pretty frustrated about it, but she busted out a top rope Hurricane Rana right after, so that made up for it. The easiest way to make people forget about a botch is to just give them some kind of big flashy move and just make sure you don't screw it up, and then people forget. Although I'm sure that will end up in the next Botchamania video. This was all about setting the table for whatever the hell it is they're doing at WrestleMania. I assume it's a 4-way, but, then you got Dana Brooke. Where does she factor into all this? Would they do a 5-way? I don't know. Sasha Banks ran out, and she attacked Charlotte outside the ring. They started brawling, and I'm thinking, okay, DQ finish. Referee is looking right at this. Never calls for the disqualification. Boy, this ref was awfully lenient here in this match. And, the whole thing is like, we've seen plenty. How many times have we seen matches where you don't even have to connect with the person? It's like, well, Sasha didn't touch her. And first of all, I think she did. But even if she didn't, how many times have we seen people run out and immediately the ref calls for the DQ? That's what's so comical to me about this new book. Again, I talked about this on the podcast earlier. I haven't read it. But apparently there's like this rule book, this WWE book of rules that just came out. I'd love to see this book. You'd have one page that has like the same rule in 15 different ways. Because they change on a dime. I mean, it's comical that, of all companies, they could have a book of rules. So on this show, I guess her running out and brawling with one of the participants did not constitute a DQ. So the ref let the match go. And poor Charlotte was distracted by all this. She ended up walking right into a belly to Bayley on the floor. Bayley rolled her in the ring. When Bayley got in to go for the pin, Charlotte rolled her up. And she grabbed the tights. Referee didn't see it. Charlotte, though, or Sasha, I should say, pointed it out to the ref and said, hey, she's got her hands on the tights. And Charlotte went to go after Sasha, but Bayley rolled her up. Charlotte rolled through, but when she got vertical again, Bayley caught her for another belly to Bayley, and she got the pin. So, Charlotte is, in fact, not a 5-time women's champion, and the streak is over. And I see a lot of people on Twitter before I started recording here, talking about, again, the awful finish to the Strowman Roman Reigns match and what they did with Goldberg and Owens, and then they point to Charlotte's streak ending. Oh, look at these 3 awful things they did on this show. And I look at the Charlotte thing and I'm like, are you people kidding me? Are you kidding me? No, you don't give a shit about Charlotte's streak. Who cares? What is it? Was she the Undertaker? The Undertaker with a vagina? I mean, give me a break. You don't care about her streak. People aren't genuinely upset that her stupid streak ended. Give me a break. I'm going to give them credit. I'm going to give them credit for not playing hot potato with this title one more time, because I thought for sure Charlotte was walking out a 5-time champ. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that they did not switch the title again 2 weeks after Bayley won it. I say good for them. Keeping the belt on Bayley. Good for them. And what it does here is it sets up a potential rift between Bayley and Sasha, because Bayley did not know that Sasha came out. And I assume she did not ask her to. But she did anyway. Meanwhile, Charlotte had told Dana, stay in the back. Don't interfere in the match. And then we see Sasha come out and interfere anyway. So now we'll see how this plays out on Raw tomorrow night. I've not really been into the women's stuff on Raw for a while, but I'm mildly intrigued to see how this plays out, and if we start to see signs of heel Sasha, perhaps we'll see where they go with this. But again, don't lump the end of Charlotte's streak into whatever, argument you have about these awful finishes on this show. Okay, because you don't care about Charlotte's streak. That is manufactured rage. I don't believe for a second that the majority of people are this upset over Charlotte. The Charlotte streak is a stupid thing that WWE came up with that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. You want to be upset about what they did to Kevin Owens, be upset over what they did to Kevin Owens. You want to be upset over Roman Reigns beating Strowman clean? I'm with you, 100%. This is not something worth getting upset about. It is some bullshit little nonsensical streak that WWE came up with, and now it's over. I'm a little surprised they ended it on this show, but am I upset? Of course I'm not upset. And you shouldn't be either. There's nothing here to get upset about when it comes to Charlotte's streak coming to an end. Oh, blasphemy. Who cares? Who cares? Goldberg and Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship. The entrances started at 10:53, so you knew this wasn't going very long. Goldberg comes out. Kevin Owens comes out. They do the introductions. Before the referee could even call for the bell, Owens takes a powder. He immediately gets out of the ring. He's stalling and stalling and stalling and stalling and stalling. Kevin Owens, a trademark Kevin Owens heel move here. Then he would get up on the apron. He would get down. He would get in the ring. He would roll out. This started to get very old, I will say. I kind of get a chuckle out of it when Owens does it once. By the fourth time, it's old. Especially when it's already 11 o'clock and I'm ready for this pay-per-view to be over. I'm like, get on with it already. So finally he gets in the ring and he's like, all right, I'm ready. Ring the bell, ring the bell. And before the referee can ring the bell, Chris Jericho's music hits. But then for some reason, the referee calls for the bell anyway. So once the bell rings, Owen says, oh shit. He turns around. He immediately eats a spear, gets hit with a jackhammer, and pinned. And just like that, Kevin Owens' reign as the Universal Champion comes to an end. He had a nice run. Actually, he really didn't, but he had a nice run, I guess, in terms of length. I don't know that I expected him to be champion for this long, but I think we will look back on this reign of Kevin Owens with disappointment, even though he did have the belt for a number of months, because for the majority of that run, he was booked to be a joke. I mean, you could be the champion and still be booked to be a joke. And I said it a few weeks ago, when he turned on Jericho, that Festival of Friendship, that was some of the best television they've done in a long, long time. And it was shades of the old Kevin Owens, when Kevin Owens first came to NXT and turned on Sami and talked about, I do what I do for my family. I want to put food on the table for my family. I don't have friends. I don't need friends. I'm all about myself, and I'm all about money and titles. And that's what Kevin Owens was. He was a prize fighter. And with the Jericho stuff, as entertaining as it was, there was no real balance. We never really, it's not like Jericho or Owens was kind of going back and forth between the comedy and the serious. Like, he was basically in this chicken shit heel comedy role for all these months. And it wasn't until the very end that we finally got a chance to see the real heel within Kevin Owens. And then, unfortunately, it was too late, because you knew he was losing this title. There was never any doubt in my mind. I mean, there were still people emailing me today saying, do you think Owens is going to win? And I said, there's always a chance. Brock could run in, give him the F5, Owens retains. But no, there was never a doubt in my mind. My prediction from last week and all those weeks ago never changed. I said Goldberg is going to win the championship. And in fact, people got really pissed off at me all those weeks back when I said not only is Goldberg going to win the championship, Goldberg should win the championship. Because the rumors were, and I assume this is still the case, although Vince could change his mind, but the plan was for Goldberg and Brock to be the main event at WrestleMania this year. They were going to go on last. And my argument was, you have had matches in the past, Rock and Cena. I mean, you could find matches here and there that weren't for the championship that went on last. True. But the championship match suffers as a result because it just doesn't feel like a big deal. And it happened to Jericho and CM Punk, and it's happened to other people as well. And my argument is, the biggest match you could do at WrestleMania this year, just looking at the card, like the actual card that has been rumored and proposed for a while, the biggest match, whether you like these guys or not, is clearly Goldberg and Brock. And so if that's the biggest match that you can do, and if this is the match they want to go on last, then it should be for the championship. And a lot of you disagreed with me, and that's cool. But that's my argument. And I said, if that's Vince's decision, then they should have the title on the line. Kevin Owens and Jericho, they could wrestle for the US title. But to just do Owens and Jericho as an undercard match, second, third, fourth from the top, and put the Universal title on the line, it just makes the title, it just makes it feel like an undercard match. These are your two biggest stars. Goldberg and Brock are your two biggest stars. I don't know what that says about the product because these guys only show up a handful of times every year, but they are the two biggest stars. Goldberg is the biggest babyface they have on that Raw roster right now. And Brock is whatever the hell Brock is. Some people like him, some people don't. I guess he's a heel, but it should be for the championship. And not only did I argue that, but what really pissed people off was I said, if you are going to have Goldberg win the championship, then he should do it in short order. Now, I didn't expect it to go this short. I will say I was not thrilled with the way they did this. Although I did say that it should be kept short, I wasn't thinking 21 seconds. I timed it. It was, in fact, 21 seconds and change that this match went. It's a hell of a lot shorter than I thought it would be. But overall, it pretty much went the way I thought it would. It was kept short. Goldberg was dominant. He won. Jericho factored in, which you knew he would. So it went exactly as I thought it would. My issue with this, first of all, is it's okay for Goldberg to show some weakness. Goldberg has not taken a bump since 2004. This guy has not taken a bump in over a decade. We have not seen him do that in a match. I guess there was a segment where Rusev kind of hit him a few times, but we really haven't seen this guy take a bump since 2004. And it's okay if he shows a moment of weakness. It's okay if he takes a bump. It's okay if he gets knocked down, if somebody rakes the eyes or does something to make him look vulnerable, even if just for a few seconds, to at least make you think this guy might actually lose. I figured Owens was going to stall in the beginning, which he did, but they would at least do like a near fall or a tease that Owens might be able to steal the win, and then have Jericho interfere, then hit his music, or have him run out from the crowd and distract Kevin Owens. So my criticism of this is that they could have at least tried to be a little more creative with the way they did it. This was very lazy. I mean, that's just all there is to it. The way they did this was very paint by numbers, very lazy. Then again, this creative team didn't exactly show much in the way of creativity on the show, so I suppose I really shouldn't be all that surprised. Really, up and down this card, there wasn't a whole lot of creativity to what they did tonight. And even though we got some good matches, I look back on the show now and I say this was the final show, pay-per-view, before WrestleMania. And this was not a good showcase going into your biggest show of the year. This was just not the kind of show I think that inspires people to get overly excited about your WrestleMania card. Actually, matter of fact, let me check. I'm almost afraid now. Check the poll before we wrap up here. See where we are. We are. Oh yeah. Ugh. It's getting worse. It's getting worse, folks. There's still time to vote, by the way. You can vote. It's on my Twitter at Solomonster. We are now up over 1,400 votes. So we have more than doubled where we were when I first started recording this. 21% thumbs up, 79% thumbs down. It's like a reverse SmackDown poll. So, people were not happy with this show. And again, I can see why. I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that there were some really good matches on the show. Don't let the finish kind of ruin that or make you forget about that, because Neville and Gallaher had a kick-ass match, and for as much as I thought that finish was shit, and it was the wrong decision to make, and they only have themselves to blame for it, Reigns and Strowman had a great match. And I think that has to be pointed out, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. And again, it's a shame. It's a shame that they felt that they had to do that kind of finish, because it didn't have to go down that way. So that's your Fastlane review. If you have your thoughts, I'm sure many of you do, and I'm sure many of you will disagree. But you can leave your comments down below. You can follow me on Twitter at Solomonster. If you want to vote in the poll's going to be open for another couple of days, so feel free to go ahead and vote. Thumbs up, thumbs down. The next pay-per-view is WrestleMania. I will be down in Orlando for all the festivities. I will be at WrestleMania. I can't say I'm overly excited about this year's card. I'm more excited about meeting you guys and doing, the NXT show and all that kind of stuff. But I will definitely try to get a review up from the hotel or wherever. We'll try to get another one up here on YouTube after WrestleMania with all my thoughts. So definitely look for that. Hit the subscribe button if you are not already a subscriber. Thank you for all of your support. You can check out the full episodes of the podcast every Sunday. They go up on the Solomonster.com, Stitcher Radio, iTunes. You can subscribe there as we approach 500 episodes this summer of the Sound Off. Very excited about that. So we'll be back real soon with a brand new Sound Off Extra. Also, don't forget, you can go back and check out the interview I did with the former WWE lead SmackDown writer and former writer as well for TNA, Dave Lagana. Did a great hour-plus long interview with him the other day that's gotten some great feedback. That's also up here on the channel, so definitely check that out. Until next time, be well, stay safe. We will see you back here for a brand new extra real soon. Until then, take care, guys.